So I'm the CEO of Covenant and the game director of Gord, and I will be explaining what went wrong with this project and why we failed so much, so miserably with this. But before we get down to this, just a few words about myself. I'm basically a producer. I was working for several companies across the last decade, from Reality Pump here in Krakow through 11-bit Studios and CD Projekt Red, before I turned indie and started my own company in 2020. So I worked on a variety of titles from small mobile games up to AAA RPGs, so across everything across the board. And now the first video, if I can ask you to play it just so we know what we are talking about. And it
Peggy
explains
18.
the gameplay of the game.
My king. Our steward rules a populace who call themselves the Tribe of the Dawn. They are primitive people. They gather wood and reeds to build their structures, and use clay and bog iron to improve them. Like all simple folk, they're compelled by survival to leave the comfort of the village. Many dream of adventure, but the surrounding woods are uninviting. Death and pain await in the wild. Evil creeps and crawls through the dark recesses of their minds. Your subjects are only human, and as such, their minds and bodies can be broken. In trying times, the people pray for aid. They have a witch who whispers powerful spells, blessing the tribespeople or cursing their foes. But even divine assistance may not be enough. They can only watch as their wooden settlement crumbles to dust, one after another.
This settlement you speak of, what do they call it?
All right. So that is the baseline. So basically, it's a base builder game that you develop your gourd, your settlement within a constrained space, and then you venture outside to finish some quests, loot some stuff, defeat monsters, and then go back to recover and build up your base again. So that's basically the loop of the game, so that we establish this knowledge. So what we did at the very beginning, so we started, actually it started from Digital Dragons in 2019 when I met my co-founder Marlena Babieno from Blight Fund, and I pitched her a different game, my first indie game, puzzle game, that had received a mixed reception in potential publishers, so I dropped that project and asked her whether it's possible to actually get some seed funding for some new things. So what she surprisingly did is that she saw potential in the production value that I put in the previous project, so we said yes. So I created 2 pitches, and one of the pitches was a game called Wicked Dwelling, which is basically Gord right now. So I dropped the game a name Wicked Dwelling because it's a complex name, and actually trademarked the name called Gord, because basically nobody knows what it is. And that was 2019. And in 2019, I also outsourced programmers because I was struggling with hiring people back in that age. And I outsourced programmers from Azure Studios. They were actually putting the backbones of the architecture of the game back in 2019, even before Covenant has been established. So That concept had a lot of potential. So everybody catch the idea of making a strategy game in the sort of Witchery-like lore, right? You're making a Witcher RTS, so that's the the most simplified version of this concept. So everybody liked this idea. It's a solid idea, solid art direction, because I was the producer for art at The Witcher 3, so it was easy for me to actually adopt this art style or similar art style for this game. So that went right. What went wrong at that point is that it was already feature creeped at the very, very beginning, at the stage of game design document. And the thing that I didn't realize at that point, because I wanted to check as much boxes as possible within this game to attract as much attention from potential publishers or investors as possible. So it was already feature creeped at the very beginning in 2019. And in 2019, there was also this direction of a horror strategy game that I wanted to pursue, because I felt that, yeah, since we are doing this Witchery style art direction, we can use that as a scare in order to deliver something that I was calling horror strategy game. So that was the direction that I was going for. I felt that it is a blue ocean and I can do something original with it. It didn't work out at the end. So the whole presentation will be actually structured in a way of a timeline. So if you watched Loki, you know about the sacred timeline. There is a timeline that starts, in our case, from this 2019 situation. And let's go to the situation that we strive for of getting, again, very simplified version, 80 plus on Metacritic. That's the very simplified version of the game is relatively good. So that was my goal. So I wanted to go from the concept up to the release of releasing a relatively good game of 80 plus, let's say. And I will be showing a lot of hidden things, things that I haven't showed publicly before. So those are, for example, the screenshots that I made each month at the very beginning of this project, how the project developed over the early stages. So we were working on assets from Asset Store, and as I mentioned, Onshore Studios was putting it up. And I will be coming back to this board especially. So imagine it as a timeline. We start here, and this is the team's belief of how the final results will be looking like. And this end is, let's say, this the Metacritic score. So one of the ways how you can measure that the game is relatively good. So we felt that since we've got this initial funding and everybody liked the idea, we are going for something 80 plus, maybe even 90. Great game, let's go for it. It has a lot of potential. So let's go. That was our idea. Then there was this prototyping phase, and we were wrong from the start in very many areas. And of course, it's rather normal in prototyping game. You don't get it right for the first time, right? But we also did many things correctly. So what I'm very glad about and proud about is that we imposed from the very beginning very good working conditions, very good working culture. We had flexible working hours. We had discussions each Friday. We've had very no crunch policy. And people were very glad about it. And the production went very well at that point with the plan that we had in mind. We had a long-term plan, and the art style was quickly defined. So that was that. And the horror strategy direction was dropped immediately after like 6 months. We were having problems with actually delivering the scare element in the strategy game, especially because of the isometric camera. Very difficult to deliver actually this emotional scare response in the player. We can think that the units, the subjects that you manage, they are scared, but the player wasn't. So we dropped that, and we turned into adventure strategy, which we felt pretty glad about, because adventure is also we were also thinking that the adventure genre is more open, like has a little wider audience. So it's a welcome change, let's say. But then we noted, well, I can say it from the perspective of time, but we focused during this development period, we focused on too many small things, too many small details. Like, for example, we had this NPC that when you passed by him, his stomach was growling. So we were discussing the sound of the growl of this guy. And you passed the POI, there was this whistle, or some magician was working there, and there was the sound, and the team discussed the sound, while actually the player was barely noticing those elements. It had a minimal effect on the gameplay, on the overall aspect of the game, while we had this imagination that we were polishing the game and upping the quality as much as possible. So whenever somebody showed some aspect of the game, we wanted to up the quality as much as possible. So that was our thinking, that was our ambition, to up the quality, while in fact we were focusing on small things rather than the big problems that were lurking in the shadows. So that was the one big thing. The second big thing is that we worked remotely. That was the beginning of the pandemic, and we didn't have an architect for the code structure. So everybody were doing their task, were doing features, but they were doing it totally like without any coordination, and that was detrimental to the architecture of the game overall, and that resulted later on in a very poor code structure that again resulted with a lot of bugs that needed to work on later on. And we weren't concerned about the balance and fun. Why? Because we felt that that's like a prototyping phase. Like there will be more features coming in, they will deliver the fun. And this is missing, or the balance is off, don't worry about it. We will take care of it later on when the feature will come. That's a mistake. Don't do it. Like, if your game needs to be fun from the very beginning. If it's not fun now, if you add more features, probably won't be fun later on. So that's a very, very risky assumption to make. But what we did, what we felt that is good, is that we are, again, checking boxes. We felt that this game at that point needed to have this feature, this feature, this feature, needed to have base building, needed to have magic, needed to have some basic combat. So we needed to check that, we needed to deliver that, and we focused on delivering those features. We didn't focus on how fun it is right now, we focused on delivering those things. So this is again a screenshot from early stages of the prototype, and then we started delivering some stuff, some cool stuff that we could show to our backers, our investors, showcasing, and ourselves, showcasing that we are pushing the project forward, that it has some cool stuff. But that's also a trap. You're not supposed to deliver cool stuff or like cool screenshots or GIFs. You're supposed to deliver fun for the players. So remember about that. We didn't focus about. We focused on like delivering cool stuff, cool features each month, new functionality. But our belief dipped after the first silent reviews that we performed after the prototype. So the silent reviews were just devastating. They were like 6 out of 10, saying that currently this build is 6 out of 10, but it has like so much potential. It has a potential of 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, but it's currently broken. It has a lot of bugs, it has a lot of problems. 6 out of 10. This is very important because we'll get to that, and probably some of you know where we will land, but this just keep in mind this result. And then we were moving on to the vertical slice. And in the vertical slice, again, our mentality was to deliver a certain amount of dedicated features that we targeted. So we wanted to deliver a specific element of the game featuring this, and that, which will be cool, which will showcase on a trailer, which will showcase on a vertical slice. And we did just that. We delivered the atmosphere, we delivered the visuals, we benefited from the fact that we outsourced art and music, and it was done in a very efficient way, at least those departments, because outsourcing programmers didn't went very well. So that was good. What was bad is that the design had like many problems. Like the core gameplay was broken from the very beginning, and we weren't able to fix it. Like those results that we received after the prototype, we list them out. We wanted to address each and every thing, each and every element of it, but and this was something that we was focusing, like, you're a normal person, right? You're getting a result from a professional agency that telling that this isn't broken. All right, we'll address that, right? That was our thinking. But we did very little playtest along the way. We were focusing on delivering the vertical slice on time. It was delayed like 1 month. And we didn't focus much more on those design traps. But after the vertical slice, I will just scroll through some of the elements. So we've added a lot of buildings. We've added the magic, so it can be showcased right now, like custom animations per unit, per enemy, responsive to all 18 incantations that we had in the game. Showcasing some of the new elements of the HUD, of the UI. And then after the vertical slice, our trailer, since we were focusing so much on showcasing cool stuff, not the game itself, just like bits, that we succeeded in actually launching pretty good trailer done like internally that had over 1 million views on IGN, and our wishlist just skyrocketed. We begin getting calls from publishers, investors, just throwing money at us, just saying that we want to buy your shares, we want to publish your title. Like the offers were pouring in because of the trailer, because of the wish lists, because our trap of actually showcasing features worked. It worked for people. Like, actually, we send even the build, like we've sent, obviously, like we send the build to multiple people, to the publisher itself, and the publisher had a similar response. Like, they said that, well, yeah, the game has issues, but there is a huge promise, and we can, together we can work it out, and we will get to that point. We are execute on that promise. That was, again, a very tricky situation to be in. So even though we did another tests, we did another silent reviews then, so our belief dropped again a little bit, but we received so much validation from the marketing materials that our belief was just compensated by that. Like, if we are getting so many wish lists, if we are getting so many views, and people are so interested in investing in it, well, definitely we're doing something right? So we based on that validation. We were basing on that validation, not on the validation of the players actually playing the game or journalists in silent reviews, but on the response of the marketing that we prepared. And that was, again, a trap of our believing that we've got something really, really good in terms of quality, while in fact the reality was a bit different. I will be showing another timeline, just showcasing what was the actual situation going on there. So that was the vertical slice. So it went really good. We were very glad about it. And then, and one other thing, like, after this positive reception, the publisher was so convinced about the promise of the game, so that they they went into deal with us of doing not only the main game, like a PC version of it, but also doing the ports and also discussing the expansion pack for it. So we were at this very stage, like on the vertical slice, where the core gameplay was a bit broken, but the promise was there. We had a contract for actually, we were like a couple of people doing this game. We had a huge contract for like porting on multiple platforms, 12 languages, expansion pack, do it all. at once. And we felt, yeah, again, like this is a great validation of this project. Like we believe in it. Like those people believe in it. Let's just do it. Like I'm a producer. Like I can manage that, right? So we went with it. And then the content complete came, like the 2022 period, where after the vertical slice, which was just like a bit of the game, we had to actually make the whole thing within the same period of time. So we did vertical slice after within a year, and then we had a year for everything else. So that was a huge push on our side. We needed to grow the team. We needed to hire a lot of people. So basically, after the release, like including the publishing team and the localization team, which was huge as well, and the porting team, we had over 600 names on credits on this game. So it was a lot of cooperation and a lot of work poured into it. But let's get back to this content complete. So we gathered a lot of feedback from the team on a weekly basis that we wanted to address. We gathered feedback from new people coming into the team. We gathered feedback from the publisher on a monthly basis. We've got like professionally prepared like reports from a design side, production side, code side, and we addressed like each and every paragraph from those reports. So there was a lot of work poured into it to address each and every issue pointed out in the reports of the, I hear a bit of bleeding there, from the internal team. But what we did not do is to ask actually the players how they feel about the game. So we felt that there's so much things to be done within the game that we know of that there is that it would be detrimental to the project to actually show it in this poor condition to the players. And that is, again, a very risky assumption to be made. Even if your game is broken, just show it, just check whether people actually see the same things as you do, because they may totally ignore some of the aspects of the game that you are focusing on, trying to tinker, trying to, make it the best they can. They focus on something totally different, and they need something totally different. So definitely a lessons learned there. So relatively small delays. We had a lot of support. We knew what we needed to fix. There were a lot of pointers, and we just went with the list, right? We just wanted to fix all the things that were pointed out by us or by the publisher, and do the best we can. But what we didn't do, again, to use placeholders, to check some ideas, to check some assumptions, we just delivered what we planned for. So we planned for some features. Of course, there were some iterations, there were some changes, like balancing, tweaking, but we basically delivered the plan that was initially put there in place. We overinvested in a lot of things in order to make the deadlines, because we were, well, the publishing deal that we had like based on the milestones, so we needed to deliver the milestones. We needed to deliver the certain functionalities that we agreed for, not check the game, not verify or improve the game or score in the player's reception. No, that wasn't the focus. We were focusing on delivering the milestones that was agreed, because that was the source of our funding. And we rejected some of the ideas because at that point we already felt that it was a bit too late to do drastic changes. And again, why we didn't do it? Because the reception was, again, very, very positive. We went to Gamescom, for example, showing that game to journalists, did some surveys, recorded the playthrough, posted it online. Again, very positive results. We felt, yeah, very good direction, so why change it, right? We've got some things to do, let's just fix it. The reception is going well, let's just continue. All right, so we focus on things like, for example, customizing the Gord area, so we can tinker with that with a lot of requirements, because it broke a lot of things if you do it wrongly. So we added a lot of complexity in the game, and we started, instead of just monitoring the progress of the game, we started monitoring the bugs that the game was having, and starting to make fun of it, just of a as a like cool things off in our minds, I guess. And this is a playthrough from the Gamescom. I won't be playing that; it's a pretty long one, and we try to address every feedback that we received. But again, this feedback received was either from hands-off or from marketing materials that we showed. It wasn't hands-on players actually playing the game. Oftentimes, when we received the feedback from new people, they were saying like, well, we see some cool stuff there, but it's kind of not my thing. And this is also a tricky feedback to be receiving. Just watch about that. Like, if somebody say like, yeah, that's pretty cool, but not my thing, probably something else is going on there. So please watch about that. But what we did is that, for example, one of the feedback was that the cinematics aren't good enough. So we invested more in cinematics, like fully mock-upped with VFX and voiceovers and everything. Cinematics, which totaled to 48 minutes of alone cinematics in the campaign. So a lot of work went into that, for example. In an RTS game, that wasn't actually the focus. The story wasn't the focus. We actually have a nomination for the best story, but the story wasn't the focus of the game, like especially for the players. But still, if we decided to actually deliver the cinematics, and there was one detrimental decision from my part, that we dropped the isometric cinematics but turn it into something like this, that was very costly. Like this decision was costing us a lot. And after we said A, we needed to say B. Like if we started showing like the cinematics from this perspective, this camera perspective, and it was a little bit off, a little bit broken, we needed to invest more, because suddenly that was something that was rising up as the top, yeah, you need to fix that. Like people disregarded other things because the cinematics weren't there. And we have a movie. Kamil, I used a lot of your materials here.
You. Again.
Not happy to see me,
So our
sister.
animator
Why
was
are you doing this, Raven?
making fun of
How are really the only thing
some of
you
our
care about?
cinematics.
Is that what you want? To prove that you're stronger than everyone? That you're better than me?
Just showing some
just look
weird things, like
So
skinning problems we had, for example.
Talented one that got accepted to the great
All right, we
covenant.
can skip it.
It
So problems like that. And our belief dipped again because, surprise, surprise, we did silent reviews again together with the publisher. And guess what? The results were 6 out of 10. Like, that was a bit frustrating for us because, like, again, like we did all the things. We wanted to address all the issues that were pointed out previously in the reports. And we, again, like, got into the point where we got a very poor score. Even though, again, wishlists were rising, like publisher were believing in it, and this response was positive. We felt, or I felt at least, like devastated when I was reading this report. Surprisingly, not all the elements of the final like Steam reviews, player reviews, were showing up in those reports at all. Like some of the things mentioned in the Steam reviews didn't show up in any of those reports because they were we had like few playtesters there. I guess the population was like 10 people, but that's you're doing it on one build, and then there's like a year of gap, and then you're trying with another 10 people. That's not enough. Like that's a very poor population to work on. So in 2023, after we delivered all the content and all the features, we went into beta. We were swamped with the amount of bugs, and that were the result of all the things that we did, all the code depth that we had along the way. just resulted here and backfired here. And we needed to handle multiple things at once, because remember the fact that we are doing the PC game, helping out with the porting, and then doing the expansion pack together with our co-developer at the same time. Some production issues came up, like for example localization for 12 languages. So we were focusing, for example, on localization at some point. Again, totally disregarding the core of the game, the design of the game, the playtesting wasn't there because the game was in poor code conditions, so we didn't want to show the game that was crashing, for example, and that was main reason why we haven't gone either to early access or to any kind of beta. We just skipped that because we had so much work to do, so many problems to solve, that we didn't have any capacity to actually do those stuff. So what went right here? Well, we definitely drastically improved the cinematics. Like the kudos to the cinematic team here. Together with the Team 17 guidance, we were able to actually up the quality to turn it into an advantage of this game, for it to look really, really good. But that was the last moment push. I think we did it like in February or March, a couple of months before the release. We improved the campaign readability and introduced a lot of tutorials, because like oftentimes when we receive the feedback, especially from agencies that are testing the usability on the games, they oftentimes really focus on people didn't understand that. All right, so let's throw more tutorials and more tutorials. And after a while, we actually were having, a few hours of gameplay that was purely tutorialized, and that is also not fun. So that was also one of the problems, but we did remove a lot of bugs. We did optimize the game. We mitigated a lot of issues with localization. Like one of the great ideas from on my part as a junior game director was the fact that there was one suggestion from I don't remember actually who, probably the silent reviews, that in our text, in our tutorial text, there should be some bolded words just to hook the players on the most important bits so that he doesn't need to read the whole thing. So I went with it, but the problem was that the localization were already in progress. So, and we had a lot of words. Like this project had over 150,000 words in it in 12 languages. So while localization were in progress, we actually introduced this new feature, which resulted in tons of bugs, because one little letter in the tag that was broken suddenly resulted in a bug in a certain language. So 150,000 words needs to be checked and verified in all 12 languages, and each of those issues needs to be cleared out. Somehow we managed to do that. Like even I helped during the weekends in order to fix that issue, but that was I'm just pointing it out because that was just like a minor production thing, sure, that we were focusing on rather than the most important things, like the core things, like the fun things. So that was our problem. The expansion DLC's marketing required some effort. Finally, marketing came in. The release was coming in shortly, so we needed to help out with that as well. So we had Twitch drops to handle, expansion pack, porting, marketing at the same time. A lot of work, not much capacity left for the important stuff, for the cool stuff. And we did have too many features to maintain. Like currently in our new project, we are thinking more in terms of the systems, how they interact. Here we were thinking about features. Like we planned for a feature, like in 2019, we need to deliver this feature, even though it's an exception to every other system that we've got in the game. Like we need to deliver this feature and that feature and that feature. They don't talk with each other. Well, bugs. We cleared them out somehow patched the code thanks to the growing programmer team and QA team that we've got. But still, we were focusing on like delivering what we planned, not testing with players. So it got really complex at some point. And that's a screen from one of the builds from the beta, and we turned cinematics into something like this, so it looks pretty decent for an RTS game. But we did have a lot of issues as well along the way. Some of them more scarier than others. Some of them were weird and funny, but we needed somehow, to let the steam off at that point, since we were fighting bug. Oh crap! I forgot about this movie, but we won't be able to play it right now. There's a sonic sound, and the guy that is crouching is like going around. So those sorts of bugs we've got. And then there was the demo, like Steam Next Fest in 2023. We finally opened up, finally showed the game hands-on to players, which resulted in the fact that we were like, I guess, like 15th in the world in terms of the build being played across 1,200 games out there on Steam. Again, great validation. Like everybody wants to play this game. Like wishlists were pretty high at that point. I think we were at like 280,000 wishlists at that point, and people did provide us with some feedback. Unfortunately, the publisher was very reluctant to share very detailed feedback that we've received. So it was like, yeah, the game is relatively good. There are some issues, though. Some people do voice their concerns about some issues, but don't worry about it. Like, let's launch. So again, like we felt, yeah, great validation. We do have a lot of work still to be done. For example, like there was some issues with micromanagement. Let's address that as much as we can. Like there are still like 3 months until release. We can do it. Like we will do some patches, right? But people again repeated the fact that the game has cool atmosphere, audio, visuals. The price wasn't a factor because the game was in the demo was free, of course, and a decent story, cool cinematics. So we fixed that, great. But there were issues, and those issues weren't actually looked at in detail. Like we received very limited report, let's say, on that front. And then we were also very afraid of doing drastic changes. So after like 4 years of development, even if you're receiving negative feedback, like 3 months before the release, it's very tricky, especially if you're running out of money. It's very tricky to actually say, well, yeah, like some people do voice their concerns about that. Let's, drop this feature altogether and see how it goes. Like, it's a tricky thing because if I would do it, how many minutes do I have? Still 8. All right. Since we could actually break the game even more. It may result in the fact that the game would be unplayable on release if we, decide on drastic changes. This is not the time of actually doing drastic changes at the project. So we did some changes, for example, to the inventory, and there is another great movie by our lead animator.
Who can say where the road goes, where the day flows, only time
Perfectly represented our calm mind before the release.
if your love grows, as your heart shows,
All right. Thank you.
only
So that was our approach. That was our attitude. So again, we received reports. We addressed each and every thing within this report, trying to do the best we can. And then the the release went very badly. Like the release was surprising to us in many aspects, and many also things outside of the game itself were quite detrimental to the Steam reviews. So, for example, the price was a factor, was a third most cited factor of, for example, the refunds. The fact that we released the DLC at the day zero was a factor. In this, the fact that we at some point had partial support for Steam Deck and then backed it off and was unsupported. People refunded because of that. We had pre-orders, right? And people were also just afraid of the game because of the bad reviews. And the reviews, the fun part about it, the reviews were actually done on the version of the game that wasn't released because we were so sure about ourselves that we actually gave the journalists the version of the game that was earlier, and then released the patch 0 on time. Definitely the release of Baldur's Gate 3 just days before didn't help in the reception, and influencers that we cooperated with were pretty reluctant to actually play the game while they were playing Baldur's Gate, but that's not, that's not the thing about the product. The product was broken itself. Like, there were some issues. Fun part about it is that we landed in the areas which we received the results of the reports on, right? So each and every report is just like cited, this game is currently 6 out of 10, but we have potential. No. Like, we ended up, after those multiple reports, actually in the same spot. So what we tried to, and what went right, again, the same things that were actually pointed out at the very beginning in the first, after the prototype, in the first report. Then some things that we were able to fix along the way. What didn't went so good was micromanagement, especially. That was a huge thing that wasn't coming up so much in the reviews, any reviews that we've got, and journalists reviewed the game previously as well, didn't point it out on that area so much. If it was mentioned very briefly, and it wasn't on our radar at all. But that was the big thing for the players. A lot of bugs that we managed to fix in the patches, and the high price and our approach to it. What's interesting is also that the base building itself, so like placing huge buildings on the square buildings in the Gord, that default shape was round, was an issue. Wasn't coming up in any reports previously. Again, something that was totally catch us off guard. So after the release, we were totally out of money, but we did decide to invest to patch the game, to try to regain the trust of the people that bought it. So at some point we had 77 positive recent reviews on Steam because of the patching, because of the discounts that we did, and we tried to mitigate a lot of issues that the players had, but then we couldn't actually rearrange the game completely. At that point, we were, again, totally out of money, and we couldn't escape some design traps. And by design traps, I mean that, to give you an example, like I went with the design of the game. How many minutes do you have? With the design of the game to go for an experience. So I wanted to have not only anonymous subjects that you manage, but subjects that that have gender, subjects that can be children, and you can have like an emotional connection to the children. And there are some things that you can do, some quests. So, for example, a sacrifice of a child has a different emotional impact. But what it resulted in is that you, for example, need to support this this feature of having a child, for example, in quests. Because this can be a female child, male child. The quests, for example, localization needs to deal with that. Then you've got all of the things, all of the issues with cinematics. We had the cinematics of, for example, sacrifices of the children, and they had to have different animations because of the camera position. They are shorter, so everything needs to be adjusted for that. So each and every aspect of the game needs to be adjusted because of the gender, because of the age of the subject, for example, you manage. And I'm mentioning this as a design trap because at some point, if it's creating some issues for you, it's already too late, because you've invested so much in this, it's very difficult to drop completely and take it out of the game and say, yeah, we won't have children, for example, while every other aspect actually goes for it. So that was the belief of us in the game and in the potential of the game and how the game will perform finally, while I tried to draft an actual situation, what was happening behind the stages, how the game was actually doing, just like, seeing the build and just evaluating the build. So at some point it was very, very bad. I think it's, on the verge of unplayability and like below 40 that you can get. And we, did what we could with it. But for me, the main point from this presentation is to validate with the players that you're going for, because if you don't, then you fall into such traps as we do. Try to do your best. You're very ambitious. You're trying to address everything what you can, and then the result is a failure. So really be careful about that. Play test as much as you can with your players, and good luck with your projects. Thank you. And now you have any questions, right?
So yes, before questions, I wanted to remind you about the QR code that you can scan with event application to give us feedback about this presentation. So now, in case of any question, this is your time.
So first of all, thank you for very honest postmortem. I was surprised. You mentioned showing the game to the players as early as possible, and as far as I understand, this is very subjective. But do you have like a idea when your game is ready to show to the players? Because sometimes it's like very prototypish, so there's not much to show. And I know this feeling about showing your game because this is not ready yet.
Yeah.
It's coming. So
Yeah.
do you have like a time frame or like a feeling based?
I would say as early as possible, even if it's totally prototype-ish. But I catch your drift. It's very difficult, even for us, like to decide. Right now, we are showing the new game that we're doing after 6 months of development. So that's again like still a progress in our case, like not 4 years, but 6 months. But still, I guess like this should be probably shown even earlier than that.
What's next?
To the Star. We are doing a co-op survival adventure that you can play downstairs on Indie Showcase. So I invite you to that.
So if you could go back in time at one of these points, like content complete or beta, and you could reallocate this time you used to fix those sparkly features, and use this time to actually fix the gameplay and fix the designs, what is the thing that you would have sacrificed? What is the thing you would have dropped to do this instead of that?
Yeah, very good question. Thank you for that. Like, I think that from the very beginning, I guess that I would go for a more, I don't want to say like less innovative things, but definitely something that is more known. What I mean by that, like if people want to have Witcher base builder, want to have like Frostpunk Witcher, just give them that. Like just do Frostpunk Witcher. Don't do adventures, don't do combat, don't do children or stuff. Simply just, just cut to the chase, go for a specific segment of the market that you are targeting, because also something that I haven't mentioned, like when we were doing, or I was doing the analysis, business analysis for this project, I was evaluating base building games. What I ended up with doing is not a base building game, or not in full. Like, this was also our marketing issue, how to market a game that's a hybrid of base builder and an adventure game. You go out and everything. So I would definitely drop that and just focus on simple stuff. And in short, to answer your question, just cut scope. What is being done by a friend of mine in Exit Plan Games, cut scope regularly. Just focus on that. Cut scope often, discuss the project, but cut scope. As much as you can, just focus on the core, focus on the meat, test the people that you want to target. Just ask them, yeah, you like that, you don't like that, all right, we're dropping it completely. Because what is tricky is that when you're saying that maybe I won't drop it because it's so easy to maintain, so easy to do. You know, we already have a lot of animations for children, etc. Let's just keep it, right? No, like, it's results with so many things along the way you cannot imagine. You know, like small feature that you think that you can slip in there and it will be okay. No, like, it will grow. It will grow into bugs, localization issues, problems, costs that you cannot manage later on, and it's simply not worth it. So, cut scope. It was 35 euros. And then DLCs, you can go for 40. So it was quite high.
Hey Stan,
Hey, man.
quick question, if I may. Thank you for an amazing lecture. But I wonder, who was more pushy about keeping the scope, the publisher or you?
I think I was.
You were,
I think
okay.
I was,
So
like,
you did it to
honestly
yourself.
saying, like, there was something, you know, like, as a producer, as I mentioned, like, that was a list of things to be done. We agreed it with the publisher, and we are doing it. Like, it wasn't a promise, right? And we tweaked and discussed the scope, like, regularly. But again, like, this is something that we wanted to do. We have a lot of features, and each and every feature of that is cool. We'll deliver. Like, that was we are, you know, delivering this game. Even though it will cost us more money than we've got from the publisher, we'll, you know, add our money to this project, but we will deliver, and we will deliver in quality and on time. And we did that. Unfortunately, that was the objective, to deliver the project as planned, not to, you know, ask the people what they want.
Awesome, thank
So
you.
we did succeed in some way. Yeah? I think that it would be a very difficult talk. Although, if you have you know, proper results of the tests and proper estimations, I guess if you have a good publisher, we had very good publisher, very good relationship with them, they would understand. And they actually, what's funny about it is that there were some things that they said to be so for us to cut. So, for example, the identity of the subjects, to cut that completely, like, strip them of anything, strip them of the gender, of the bios, because they have bios and inventory and stuff, and very complex. Strip the game out of this completely, because it's not important for the players, and they were saying, and I didn't went with that because, again, like, the argument that I had was, we're showing it to the public, we're featuring this, we're showing this feature online, and people like it. So why should we drop it? And that was this, yeah, you know, we had like two arguments, like your argument, like the designer and who was feedbacking the game from the publisher side, and the results of the wish list, for example. And that was, you know, in contrast. And my vision was, you know, honestly saying, as a junior game director, bad decision, a bad call on my part. Similarly to the cinematics, like, investing so much into so developed cinematics, they look cool on trailers and they resulted in a high wish list, but still a lot of cost. We weren't able to afford it, and that was my call, still went with it. So, you know, you learn from that. Oh yeah, because the localization was broken, like totally. Like I was, during the weekends, I was just sitting with the Excel sheets because we were working on Google spreadsheets. We had all the localizations in Google spreadsheets, and I was just going through the localizations and just picking the bugs. How do you spot the bugs? Because like if you wanted to bold the text, you needed to write the tag, like unique something, and then the tag at the end. So our localization at some point were very complex because there were a lot of tags where you end and when you begin. 12 languages, 100,000, 500. Oh my God, 100,000, 50,000. All right, don't matter. Too much. Words to handle. And I said, like, definitely there are so many bugs, don't do it, like, only in English. But that wasn't an issue. Like, at the end, we were actually making it work, and the localizations weren't pointed out in Steam reviews. So, the hard part was, well, the monotonous part, the tedious part was easy. For us to handle, because that was another thing that we had on our radar. We know that is broken, and we will deliver on time, and we did that. Problem with that result was that we missed a lot of things. We hadn't had that on our radar, and we just were surprised about them being brought up at the end. Somebody else want to?
Thanks for the talk, and I just wanted to ask, how do you reach the audience that you're targeting so early on when you just have this prototype and like no one has any knowledge of the game like outside? Like how do you do this to gain the feedback that you want from the targeted audience?
So, all right. So the first part of the question is I don't know currently, because currently it's very, very hard. What we did is just like a trick. I'm not proud about it, but there was just this tagline of Exco Witcher developers are doing, Witcher RTS, and it went. And it flied. So that was the publicity part. But in terms of like the user feedback, if you are going outside, if you are like going public with your project, we are doing it right now with our new project, going public with it, there is definitely at least a small portion of players that will get interested in it, and then you can work with that. Like if I cannot recall the name of the book that I just read, but there was this notion of nurturing your early adopters. So if you focus on your early adopters, you ask them, you work with them a lot. You've shown the game to them, even give them the build to just play and receive the feedback about it. You can work and make it like, this spark is the beginning. Like you can make the huge fire out of it. So if they are satisfied, then there is an option that they will, invite more friends, and then you're developing more and more quality product from that. And then if there is a budget for marketing, then it goes viral because the core is there and the fun is there. So core audience.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So thank you guys for coming. Take care.